Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at the news from March 2nd, 2025. A pretty crazy day by the looks of it.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how one day can give you such a snapshot of everything that's going on.
Absolutely. So much going on. So let's jump right in and start with the biggest story, the war in Ukraine. Zelensky met with Trump, the former U.S. president. Um, what happened there?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was a pretty tense meeting. Trump was urging Zelensky to try to make some kind of a deal with Russia.
A deal.
Yeah, a deal. He even said that by not making a deal, Ukraine was actually, risking World War III.
Wow. That's putting a lot of pressure on Zelensky, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And it seems like the U.S.'s allies in Europe weren't too happy about it either.
What do you mean?
They're actually working on their own plan for a ceasefire.
Mhm.
Could be some real trouble in that alliance, right?
It seems like it. So after all that drama, Zelensky went to London to meet with European leaders. Sounds like he's really trying to balance things out.
Definitely. And as you can imagine, Russia had some things to say about it. They called the meeting with Trump a complete diplomatic failure, which, of course, plays right into their narrative.
Of course. And on the topic of conflicts, the Israel-Hamas conflict hit a pretty grim milestone, 500 days.
500 days. Can you imagine? There's a ceasefire for now, but things are still really tense. And Israel even went so far as to suspend aid to Gaza, all to try and put pressure on Hamas.
That's got to be having a huge impact on the people caught in the middle.
Absolutely. It's a complicated situation all around.
Yeah.
And there was also that terrible bus crash in Bolivia.
Oh, right. What happened there?
Yeah, at least 37 people died. Just awful. Makes you think about the risks we face every day, doesn't it?
Definitely. Now, shifting gears a bit to U.S. politics, there's a lot of fallout from that Trump-Zelensky meeting. Some Republicans are on Trump's side, but Democrats are worried about the damage to U.S.-Ukraine relations.
It's such a stark reminder of just how polarized things are in U.S. politics these days.
For sure. And Zelensky has the challenge of trying to get everyone on board, Democrats and Republicans alike, to help Ukraine.
It's a tough job, for sure.
It is. And on a different note, we also saw the passing of a real icon, Hazel Dukes.
Yeah, such a loss. A giant in the fight for civil rights.
What was she known for?
Oh, so many things. She was president of the New York NAACP for years and dedicated her life to fighting for things like voting rights and fair housing.
Really a champion for equality.
Definitely. And her legacy speaks for itself.
Huh.
Now, in other news, Pope Francis had a bit of a health scare.
Oh, no. What happened?
He had a respiratory crisis. A lot of people were holding their breath, but thankfully he's stable now.
That's good to hear. So back in the U.S., the Pentagon is sending more troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. The total is up to 9,000 now.
Yeah, they're saying it's because of the increase in migration and security concerns. It's a big move, no doubt.
Definitely. And you know what's interesting? Russia seems to be happy with this recent shift in U.S. foreign policy under Trump.
They've actually said that it aligns more with their views. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. What does that tell us about the bigger picture, the global power dynamics and all that?
A lot of questions to consider. Let's move on to business now, shall we? President Trump signed some executive orders to boost U.S. lumber production.
Okay, and what does that mean? What will those executive orders do?
Well, there's a chance they could lead to new tariffs on Canadian lumber.
So it could end up costing more to build houses here.
That's right. It could make things more expensive.
Yeah,
It's a reminder of how trade policies really do affect our daily lives.
for sure. And then there's Elon Musk, always busy, just welcomed his 14th child into the world.
Must be a full house over there. And then in tech news, there was a big Microsoft outage that left a lot of people stranded.
Oh yeah, what happened there?
Thousands of people couldn't access their services like Outlook.
Yeah.
You really realize how much we rely on technology when something like that happens.
Absolutely. And speaking of technology, remember Skype?
I do.
Well, say goodbye. Microsoft is shutting it down in May. They want everyone to use Teams now.
The end of an era.
It is. And on a more serious note, there's some concern about the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and their access to sensitive data, including intelligence secrets.
Yeah, Democrats are worried about security risks, saying DOGE having access to that kind of information is dangerous.
Yeah, I can see why they'd be worried about that.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance between, making the government run smoothly and keeping everything safe in the digital age.
It's a tough one. But then we have this amazing story about how AI helped a woman get her voice back.
Incredible, right? She lost her voice because of a rare brain disease, and AI technology helped her to speak again.
It's amazing what technology can do these days.
It really is. And now for a little sports news. The Washington Commanders just picked up wide receiver Deebo Samuel from the 49ers.
Yeah, big move for them.
Yeah, big change for the team. On the other hand, the Yankees are dealing with a setback because Giancarlo Stanton is starting the season on the injured list.
Tough break for the Yankees.
Yeah, his elbow is acting up. Now, over in Hollywood, it's Oscar season, and of course, there's always some drama.
What happened now?
Harrison Ford had to pull out of presenting. He's got shingles.
Oh, no. Poor guy.
Hope he gets well soon. Sadly, we also lost Grammy-nominated singer Angie Stone.
Oh, what happened to her?
She died in a car crash. She was 63.
So sad.
Yeah, a real loss for the music world. And finally, remember that Oscars kiss between Adrian Brody and Halle Berry back in 2003?
Vaguely.
Well, Brody just talked about it and said, maybe it wasn't the best thing to do.
Oh, really?
It's interesting how our views on things like that change over time.
It really is. So, wow, we've covered a lot. War and politics, tech, even tequila and the Oscars. What stands out to you?
It's really incredible how all these stories are connected somehow.
What's
Global
that?
politics, affecting local stuff, technology changing our lives, good and bad. It's all tied together.
I agree. It's a lot to think about. And it makes you wonder, what else is going on behind the scenes of just this one day, March 2nd, 2025?
Back again for our deep dive into March 2nd, 2025. Ready for more?
Oh, yeah. Always up for digging a little deeper. I'm still thinking about that Trump-Zelenskyy meeting. It feels like a real shift in the way the U.S. is approaching foreign policy.
A lot of analysts are saying that, yeah. There's this idea, especially among some Republicans, that the U.S. needs to focus more on itself, domestic issues, and less on getting involved in things overseas.
So like America first, but round two.
Exactly, America First 2.0. But then you have the decision to send even more troops to the border with Mexico. Doesn't that kind of go against that whole idea of focusing inward?
Right, that's what I was thinking. Less foreign involvement, but more troops at the border.
It shows how complicated this America First idea really is. Some people think that border security is part of it, protecting national interests.
I see. So it's about protecting those interests, but maybe not through the usual foreign interventions. And Russia seems to be okay with this shift in U.S. policy.
Yeah, they've said it's more in line with their way of thinking. It makes you wonder, right? Are we heading towards a world where these big powers like the U.S. and Russia are just looking out for themselves? What happens to global cooperation then?
That's a scary thought, especially with everything going on in Ukraine. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. I want to talk about something a bit lighter, something I never thought I'd hear. A tequila surplus.
Too much tequila.
Apparently. Mexico's got more tequila than they know what to do with, and prices have dropped. I bet the agave farmers aren't too happy.
Not at all. It's a classic case of supply and demand.
Yeah.
They planted too much agave, plus it seems like people are drinking less alcohol these days.
Really? I thought everyone loved a good margarita.
Well, it's more the younger generations. They're drinking less overall, going for fancier cocktails or even skipping the alcohol altogether.
So this tequila thing, it's part of a bigger trend in the whole alcohol industry.
Yep, it's a challenge for these companies. They have to adapt, come up with new ideas, maybe even rethink their whole way of doing business.
Wow. Back to the U.S. now. Those executive orders Trump signed about boosting lumber production. Could that lead to a trade war with Canada?
It's possible. If they put tariffs on Canadian lumber, things could get messy.
What would that mean for people here?
Well, building materials would get more expensive.
Yeah.
Building a new house, renovations, all that would cost more. It would hit consumers, construction companies, the whole housing market, basically.
So much for my home improvement plans then. And Canada's economy is already feeling the heat, right?
Absolutely. There's talk of job losses, even a recession. If these tariffs happen, trade wars are never simple, and there are always consequences, sometimes ones you don't expect.
It's complicated, for sure. Okay, let's talk about that Microsoft outage. It really messed things up for people.
Oh, yeah. It showed us how much we depend on these big tech companies.
Yeah.
Imagine not being able to check your email or get to your work files for hours.
I'd probably lose my mind. And then there's the news about Skype shutting down.
Sad, isn't it? I remember when Skype was the big thing, but now it's all about Zoom and Teams.
The tech world moves fast. Sometimes you have to say goodbye to the old stuff, I guess. But this whole DOGE thing, the Department of Government Efficiency, having access to all that sensitive data, that's worrying.
It is. Democrats are really concerned about the risks to national security, data breaches, misuse of information, even foreign interference. It's all possible.
So it's about efficiency versus security, but some would say DOGE needs that data to do its job properly.
Right. It's a tough one. But there's also that amazing story about how AI helped a woman to speak again.
Right. Incredible story.
Really shows the positive side of technology, how it can change people's lives for the better.
Definitely a good reminder. Okay, what's happening in the world of sports?
Looks like the Washington Commanders are hoping Debo Samuel will be their secret weapon.
That was a bold move, giving up so much to get him. Risky, but he could really make a difference for them. And the Yankees, they're having to figure things out without Stanton?
Yeah, they'll need to find someone to fill his spot if they want to do well this season. Maybe give some younger players a chance or look for someone new.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. And Harrison Ford having to drop out of the Oscars because of shingles.
Poor guy. Hope he feels better soon.
Hmm.
It just shows that even the biggest stars are human.
Absolutely. And it was so sad to hear about Angie Stone.
Yeah, what a loss for the music world. She had such a powerful voice and touched so many people with her music.
Her legacy will live on. And then there's Adrian Brody talking about that kiss with Halle Berry at the Oscars all those years ago.
I think it's great that he's reflecting on it now. Shows how things have changed, how we think about consent and personal boundaries.
It's a conversation that's still evolving. So we've covered a lot in this part, too. It's clear that March 2nd, 2025 was a day full of complex events, and they're all linked in some way.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. What happens in one part of the world can have a big impact on another. And with that in mind, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore some more of these connections and see what we can learn from this extraordinary day.
Back for the final part of our deep dive into March 2nd, 2025. Ready to see what we can find when we look at the bigger picture?
I think so. We were talking about that possible shift in U.S. foreign policy, toward America first, but they're also sending more troops to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, it's hard to square those two things. Less foreign involvement, but a bigger military presence at the border.
It's all about how you define America first, I guess. Some argue that border security falls under that umbrella. It's about protecting the nation's interests, even if it means having more troops there.
Protecting interests, but maybe not in the traditional way, not through foreign interventions. And Russia seems to like this shift in U.S. policy.
They've said so publicly, yeah. That it's more in line with their thinking. It makes you think, doesn't it? Are we moving toward a world where these big powers, the U.S. and Russia, are just focused on themselves? What happens to global cooperation then?
A lot to think about there, and we've got potential trade wars brewing, like the one with Canada over lumber, plus that tequila surplus in Mexico, all because of changing tastes.
It all points to how interconnected the global economy really is. Take the tequila surplus. It's not just about overplanting. It's also that younger folks are drinking less alcohol overall. That's happening everywhere, not just in Mexico.
So it's shaking up the whole alcohol industry, not just tequila. They're all having to adapt.
Exactly. And those tariffs on Canadian lumber, they could have a ripple effect throughout the U.S. economy. More expensive building materials mean higher housing costs. That affects how much people spend, which affects economic growth. It's all tied together.
It is, yeah. And we can't forget about cyber threats, like the DOGE situation with intelligence secrets and that North Korean cryptocurrency heist. Cybercrime's a big deal now.
Absolutely. And it's getting more sophisticated all the time. They're not just after money anymore. They want sensitive information. They want to disrupt things, maybe even influence elections. The stakes are high.
So we all need to be careful. Individuals, businesses, governments, everyone.
Absolutely. But there's also a lot of good happening with technology. Think about that woman who got her voice back thanks to AI. What a story.
It gives you hope for the future. And even in sports, you see resilience and adaptation. The Commanders betting on Debo Samuel, the Yankees having to deal without Stanton. They're all pushing forward, trying to succeed despite the challenges.
And in entertainment, things are changing too.
Yeah.
Adrian Brody, looking back at that Oscars kiss, shows how our understanding of certain things evolves.
It does. So as we wrap up our deep dive into March 2nd, 2025, what have we learned?
It's a reminder that we live in a world of connections, often ones we don't even see. What happens in one place can affect another. Technology can be both good and bad, and the choices we make today will have consequences down the road.
I agree. Everything is connected, and understanding those connections is so important. The next time you see a bunch of headlines, take a step back and think about the bigger picture. You might be surprised by what you find.
Exactly. Stay curious, think critically. And that wraps up our deep dive into March 2nd, 2025. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking questions.